Hey, how's it going, everyone? Just want to do a lesson starting off with a very, very famous verse in John chapter 8. And so I made a list of things of conversations that I've noticed over the last few years, build these things up that, irritate people, and in particular, religious people. And so I want to go through that list, but also start with a verse or read a chunk of John chapter 8. 35, and the servant abideth not in the house forever, but the Son abideth ever. If the Son therefore shall make you free, ye shall be free indeed. So we see that the only person that is able to set anybody free is Christ. And so we're going to talk about freedom, and that's going to be the point of this lesson, what it looks like to be free and sounds like. Verse 37, I know that ye are Abraham's seed, but ye seek to kill me because my word hath no place in you. So Christ is telling us that there are people that are just programmed to not receive truths. And so this is a list that I made of things that are obviously, very, very obviously true from the Bible. And if people get offended by any of these, then we, can assume, or they're likely on God's left-hand side. Again, we don't know what happens from that point forward. Hopefully, people change and come to more and more truth. But this is being reaffirmed here in this interaction where Christ is, because he knows, where his spirits are, left and right hand side. So he's saying the reason why the words that he's saying don't make sense to people is because my word hath no place in you. They're not able to receive it. And so they're just people that are programmed to go against, this list that I made and many, many other things. But verse 38, I speak that which I have seen with my Father, and ye do which ye have seen with your father. He's saying that their father Satan, who's the chief spirit on the left-hand side. They answered and said unto him, Abraham is our father. Jesus saith unto them, if ye were Abraham's children, ye would do the works of Abraham. Notice that what he says, the works of Abraham. But now ye seek to kill me, a man that hath told you the truth, which I have heard of God. This did not Abraham. Ye do the deeds of your father. Then said they to him, we have not been born of fornication. We have one Father, even God. So these people are claiming to be truthers. So in modern day, it would be the truth community, all the whatever, flat earthers, Christians, religious people and all that kind of stuff. Jesus said unto them, if God were your Father, ye would love me. For I proceeded forth and came from God, neither came I of myself, but he sent me. So Christ again is acknowledging that the Most High is the creator of everything. He made Christ. He gave Christ his mission, his ministry, and he had to suffer on the cross, because of the directive of the Most High. Why do ye not understand my speech, even because ye cannot hear my words? You are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar, and the father of it. And because I tell you the truth, ye believe me not. Which of you convinced me of sin? And I say the truth, which do ye not? Why do ye not believe? He that is of God heareth God's words. Ye therefore hear them not, because ye are not of God. So Christ is saying that there are a group, and we have other, examples in the Bible where Christ explicitly tells us that Satan, the father of lies, literally, as he described him here, has, implanted his spirit everywhere, and I want people to know it's like a lot of people, and I want people to know just in Christianity, that's where he would start in order to be successful in setting up a system that is against the Bible. And so that's why, this list that I've compiled is more not really for non-religious people, because none of these terms would even make sense to them, that I'll go through, but in particular, like for religious people. And so for me personally, what this has helped me in my journey, putting this puzzle together about, especially the book of Revelation, is then it helps me decide who's free. Because Jesus says, like I read earlier in 36, if the Son therefore shall make you free, you shall be free indeed. Again, not a coincidence. That's verse 36, 666. And so there's so much numerology in the Bible, it's out of control. And so there's going to be two groups of people that are down with the beast system, 666, and then there's another group that will be free, and only Christ sets them free. And so a person who's free, I call them an infinite scripter. That means that they've had to interact with Christ because he's the one who's unlocked their brain. And so a person has to experience Christ in some way, or Christ, doing something in their mind in order to be free. And so then when Christ does that, there's a high likelihood that he's given them other insights, or is, working with them in some real way. And so I use this list, and I could probably make an even longer one, to filter out, people that I know then have not interacted with Christ. And so again, we can interact with these people, but I don't use them in any way to put this puzzle together, except in a reciprocal kind of way. Like what they teach, it's probably the opposite, that kind of thing. And so it's been important for me to come to these conclusions. And I just want people to know that for a person to have interacted with Christ, to be, on God's right-hand side, they have to be free, because that's what Christ says here. And so, because he sets people free. And so, in these days, freedom is not, infinite free will and can do whatever you want and all that kind of stuff. Freedom is freedom to accept that Christ is from God, which is what he says. And so that's what we're free to do now. We're free to acknowledge that Jesus Christ is the quote personality of the Most High. And then we worship that freely. And so everything that is against him is against the Most High and is from Satan, and so is evil. That's what we're free to acknowledge now. And now that's just the beginning. I want people to know that doesn't, mean that just because, I appreciate these things, this list that I made, that I'm any special, but we're better than people who reject these things. But then now we have to do certain works. And then that's what is written here, where Jesus even says in verse 39, if ye were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. Not sing the same songs Abraham, preach the way Abraham did and all that kind of stuff. A majority of the people, if not all, especially the heroes of the faith, they're not necessarily the best speakers. I want people to know that. We've been brainwashed, hoodwinked in this world to believe that all the people that follow you and eloquent speech and all that is what God wants. God's going to flip the script, on this entire world, literally, I believe soon. And so don't get bamboozled, by these stupid people. That's not the way God works. God would look down on the world and know a person's heart, so a person doesn't even have to speak. He's measuring the action and then the physiology behind it, the thinking, why a person did it. Their intentions are the things that are being weighed, and so that's just don't be fooled. I'm not saying these people were not good speakers. I'm sure many were, because God makes the truth makes people clever, and so brilliant and all that kind of stuff. So there's a good verse that says the spirit quickens, and so that's what God's Spirit does. It makes a person quick, fast, sharp, all that kind of stuff. So it's all of that. But I want people to know, again, this is the theme throughout the entire Bible, that God cares about our works, and then he's very anxious and ready to reward them, with much more than we could ever imagine. So don't get duped by these Christians. And you don't even have to read this entire list that I made, that they'll get offended by just one of these things. And so they have not interacted with Christ. So they're not free. They're limited scripters. So we know that they've never really interacted with Christ in order for him to allow them to set them free. But people who are free, they'll acknowledge at least these things, that I'm about to read, and more, and then they'll do the works. And so that's a person that I would say is highly likely on God's right-hand side. And again, we don't know for sure. God has to declare that ever. We're never allowed to say that with any kind of certainty. But so this is what I call conversations that irritate Satan or God's left-hand side. The first one is speak as if the Bible is true and literal. And so you'll find a majority of people, including the Hebrews, who I would say are very, very scholarly about the Bible. They don't like literal interpretations. For them, they don't like literal interpretations about the shape of the earth, about, God requiring certain works of charity and loving the poor, that God is the author of evil. So they want to keep blaming Esau, the white man, and blame everybody, just random people yelling at them going by, call women sluts and all that kind of stuff. They don't take those verses literally. And so the non-literalness is a requirement for God's left-hand side. And so, by the way, these Hebrews are wearing masks out on the streets, like thinking that they're the two witnesses. They literally are wearing the corona mask when they prophesy. I've seen them. And so, the clown show continues. And so, so if you speak in a true and literal, like the Bible's true and literal, that's going to irritate God's left-hand side. You always need to have a non-literal opening in order to have a normal conversation with God's left-hand side. Speak absolute truths. This will freak Christians out, especially. They'll just get very, very uncomfortable. They're like, no, wait, let's slow down. It could be this. Ken Hovind, I'll give you top 3 options. And then that makes it palatable. Ken Hovind's doing that because he probably knows in some cases what is the only option. For example, Mystery Babylon or The Shape of the Earth and stuff. But he's doing that to, appease, his large audience. And so he doesn't offend anybody. And so that's not what real people who are teaching the Bible do. We are just supposed to say what the Bible teaches, and that's it. And then very light interpretation that is humble, and true and righteous and all that kind of stuff. So that's what God's left-hand side needs to do to cater to other people on the left-hand side. The third one, speak in defense of the poor and the oppressed. This will be offensive to not just religious people, but non-religious people. That's just offensive to this whole system, because this whole system exalts leverage and wealth. And so get more of both. And so use leverage to get more wealth. And so do whatever you can. Leverage people. Leverage is a term used to describe credit, and all that kind of stuff. Do whatever you need to do, step on anybody's back. And so if you flip that and then, speak in defense and exalt the poor as who the people God care about, this will really irritate God's left-hand side, because their job is to keep the system going, and get people to continue to buy into it and believe it. And so in order for when a person takes the opposite stance, that God actually cares about the lowest, then, he's close by, and then this whole system has to be overturned. And so that's a good one. That should, I remember talking to some, person who's a Christian, and like, when I was telling her about, how God loves the poor, no one's talking about the poor. This was like during a political season. Like, it was like amazing to her. She was like, whoa, why are you so amazed? Why do you always talk about the poor and stuff? Like, and in my mind, I'm thinking like, Satan's won. He's successfully brainwashed even the Christians. Like, they're just out of their mind. Like, I was just saying something that was just like, some very, very complicated proof. 10-page proof in mathematics. Like, when it's just like, I've done, a lesson recently, it's like everywhere in the Bible that God loves the poor. And so this is rocket science to God's left-hand side. And the whole spirit of this lesson is, don't be stupid. Don't play dumb with these people. Use these conversations to make them uncomfortable and get them to go away, and get them, say whichever one or the couple that are the most irritating, so they'll take the fastest direction away from you, and so that's what I do. I don't really do this anymore because I've already gotten everybody away, because pretty much almost everybody in the world is offended by at least one of these things. And I want people to know, even people who are Bible scholars. And so there's really not many people left except the poor. And so this is why I'm very excited by the times that we live in, because God has literally cleaned up the house where pretty much only the poor and oppressed have a need for him. Everybody else is trusting in non-literal Bible, non-absolute truths, their wealth, whatever assets they've accumulated, the government, indirectly or directly, the list goes on, their network, family network, and all that kind of stuff. So this to me is a work of God. This is very, very exciting. And it makes sense. And, we should rejoice, when the poor and the oppressed are elevated, and the last shall be first, that kind of thing. If we want to be on God's right-hand side. Talk about, point number 4, talk about money and its flow or lack of flow. Money is off limits to God's left-hand side, because the money system is the foundation of this beast system, fractional reserve banking, interest/usury and all that, which is Antichrist, which is against the Bible. And so that's the only way that the system can continue. So if you speak out against that, then it'll irritate God's left-hand side. You talk about Black Lives Matter, talk about CV19, talk about chemtrails, talk about anything, even Mandela, flat earth, anything. accept the money system, because that is the biggest competition to God, and it's the foundation of this system. And so people who are, tight-lipped about that kind of stuff, I call them limited scripters, and they're highly likely on God's left-hand side. This one's kind of related. Talk about how useless the corporations, the governments are. This is obvious. Just anybody with common sense would know that all these corporations and the size of the government is growing every day. They're unnecessary, and many of them are actually explicitly antichrist, against the principles of the Bible. And so that's like a shot right to the heart, of this beast system. And so that's a good way that I've noticed to irritate God's left-hand side. Or when people are silent about it or don't want to really go into it, then, we can know what's going on. Christ has not set them free. Speak about the Most High and his personality, which I would say is Jesus Christ. It's his personality. It's the way the Most High would be embodied if he could be contained, which he can't be, in a person, in a human. And so talk about the Most High and how Christ is a derivative of the Most High, which Christ said this right here. I'll get that verse. John 8:42, Jesus said unto them, if God were your Father, ye would love me. For I proceeded forth and came from God. Neither came I of myself, but he sent me. Christ is saying this. And so it's not funny, but it's just right from his mouth. These are red letters. And so Christ is acknowledging that he is an idea, an output, a derivative of the Most High. And so anybody who talks about the Most High, how he rules everything, how he controls people, the animals, everything. You can't have, blade of grass, twist and turn in the wind without him authorizing it. That's offensive to people. They want you to have a conversation about earthly things, emotions, skin color, wealth, education, all that kind of stuff. Emotions, they will not let you talk about the Father of spirits, who's the Most High. This will offend the Hebrews. I want people to know these are religious people, very, very deep into the Bible. They'll get offended. Christians will definitely get offended when you bring in the Most High, because the Most High is the author of evil. He's the author of war. He's the author of confusion, all that kind of stuff. We know this from the Bible now. So anything we don't like about our life, we're supposed to go to God about that and bring those complaints to him. And he wants that. He's like, you're stupid if you don't. And so let those people be stupid and go and argue with the government and, petition Black Lives Matter to get people to care about Black lives and all that kind of stuff. God is setting up all these things, and so we, the few who are not retarded, we go right to the Most High through Christ. We have to. That's what's being said here. If we do not accept the way Christ is, and these principles are just a few of the many that align ourselves with him, then once we do that, we have access to the Most High, and he wants that. He's telling us that if we accept his teaching, then we're accepting the Most High, the Creator. And if we don't, then we're on the other side following the father of lies, which is Satan. And so these religious people thought because of their lineage that gave them some kind of position with God, and we no different in the days that we live in. Everybody and their grandmother wants to be of the lineage, but no one wants to do the works of Abraham, like Jesus said. So that's a big one. That's an important one. That's a very, very powerful one in the days that we live in now, and definitely cannot talk about the fact that Most High created this earth and he created evil, and we'll talk about that again at the end about hell. Speak with an open and infinite script. Don't get weird about certain topics. Don't really want to emphasize that. Let's kind of move on to a safer topic and all that kind of stuff. Those are limited scripters. Those are actors. And so good candidates for God's left-hand side. So we don't have to be like that. Obviously we don't have to share information that's detrimental to us or hurts other people or anything, but be very open, obviously in situations when it's not going to be used against us, which is in a lot of cases, even amongst truthers. So, guard, be mindful of that kind of thing. But, just if this is our script, this book has finite number of pages, but if we accept it as truth, then it's spiritual. It got to us and our brains were open to receive it by a spiritual transaction or many spiritual transactions. So it's infinite. This is an infinite script. And so if it's true, we're the infinite scripters who appreciate this for what it is. And so if it's false, then we're the evil people. But it's looking more and more true every single day, literally appearing more true to our very eyes. So this is a requirement to be a candidate for God's right-hand side, is to speak open, be an infinite scripter, because the script is infinite, the Bible. Admit we could be wrong and be humble. This will freak out God's left-hand side. Like, this has become so like cool now that people use it on God's left-hand side once in a while to pretend like they're sincere. And so it's a tactic that God's left-hand side uses in corporate America and other places. But generally speaking, if you just look at our government and our leadership, being wrong is like a major no-no, like can't never admit that wrong, lie until you die, literally just lie till the bitter end. No one tells the truth in court settings and all that kind of, when it's just obvious they committed crimes and stuff like that. So this is a very, very important characteristic of God's right-hand side, absolutely required, because God, we can't hide anything from God. And so lies are possibly the most offensive thing to the Most High. Admit we can be wrong, for sure. Speak on God's wrath and anger towards injustice. That's why flat earth is so offensive to this world, because everybody knows that there's injustice everywhere. So once a God exists, he's obviously angry. And so the amazing thing about the God of the Bible, he tells us explicitly how he's going to express that anger towards the world. And I'm going through the book of Enoch right now. Might do a lesson on that. It's the same narrative, God's angry towards injustice. And so this will irritate God's left-hand side, because they want this system to continue. That's what they want. That's what they've been programmed to want. Say God exists and not have faith God exists. A lot of people can move past faith in God and have a knowledge of God. Maybe we don't know the specific God yet until he does the things that he's promised, but this is offensive to people, especially the atheists and all those kind of people. They'll freak them out. And so this is why they want us to believe in the ball earth, because at least we'll still have, even if it's a toe dipped into atheism. And so they always want us to always have a foot in atheism, or not be, just be within arm's reach. And once we get too far away, diametrically opposed, then it makes them angry. And we see that on these hangouts. So that's offensive to even Christians, when you say that, because then all these other things, you get them basically for free if you take the Bible literally, which I would highly recommend people do that, and it's appropriate most of the time. Make fun of white Jesus. This will really irritate the white supremacist Christians, which are everywhere. Even non-white people are white supremacists. I want people to know that. That's just, to me, it's kind of funny at this point. We know what's going on. Then once a person is really hugging white Jesus's, calf muscle and won't leave the foot, then we know that I could find out lots of other stupid things that they believe, within, 2 to 3 minutes. So that'll irritate a lot of people. They're like, oh, why are you bringing race into this and all that kind of stuff? You can make fun of any other Jesus. You can make fun of East Indian Jesus, Chinese Jesus, same thing. There's no point in making fun of those, because no one sets up too many representations of those. But any Jesus that's not the actual Jesus, who cares? It's just a joke, to make fun of and laugh at it and, declare it as evil, which is what it is. So this will really get under the skin of God's left-hand side. Declare America as Mystery Babylon. It's very offensive, because once you declare that, then, a lot of things in the book of Revelation are unlocked, and then we're in the end times, and then it's described as the seat of Satan in Revelation 16. And so that's Satan's headquarters. And so God's left-hand side, their boss is Satan, and whether they know it or not. And so you'd be like making fun of Apple headquarters, in the presence of the CEO of Apple, for example, the gay guy, Tim Cook or whatever. And so, that's not going to be allowed for God's left-hand side. So anything else except America, anything else except the actual seat of Satan is allowed to be discussed as Mystery Babylon. Satan's okay with that, because then there's confusion, just like my first point, or second point, you can speak in circles, non-literal, nothing absolute. Satan's okay with that, confusion, because he's he's implementing, all of this confusion. And so that's a good one, for sure. Call a so-called Negro a Jew, and so not every single one are, but a majority are, if the Bible's true. And so that will annoy people, because then it's the same as making fun of white Jesus. once you say that a so-called Negro fit a majority of them are the Jews, then we know what Christ looks like. And then that makes fun of white Jesus, and that links back to point number 11. And so, but it's also a very, very important truth, because then the Bible's true. Because then you're declaring a group on earth as biblical people, and then we'd have to understand their journey here, how it was prophesied in the book of Revelation, and then where they are would have important significance in the end times, and have to be Mystery Babylon, the place where there's a second, deliverance, modern day Egypt. And so many other things fall out from that right away, just like the flat earth. It's a very, very difficult truth for a lot of people to swallow, because then the things that follow right after it are like boom, 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 immediate. So you declare with certainty that the so-called Negroes are the biblical Jews, you get 30 other truths for free, quote, for free. And that's offensive, because then that puts us in the end times immediately. Talk about charity as a way to God's heart. This will freak people out. They're like, no, you just have to love on God. Put some, white/green thumbnails of Jesus on your to talk about how much you love God, and how much you would do for God and all that kind of stuff, when you actually don't do anything for God. And so that's offensive, because and this is everywhere in the Bible. Like I just read here, the works of Abraham. God's left and right hand side are divided by works to the poor. Works of charity. And so that's offensive to people. Such a beautiful passage in Matthew, where God is separating his left and right hand side, using who ministered to the lowest of the low, who cannot repay them, and doing that work directly to God, God receiving that amongst himself. Such a beautiful passage is offensive to people. So that's why we know we're dealing with God's left hand side easily, right away. I'm including the Hebrews, people like end times teachers. They don't teach any of this kind of stuff, because they are prime candidates for God's left-hand side. And just because you don't take the mark of the beast doesn't mean you're on God's right-hand side. God will put sores on people, and he's going to visually show people who's on his left-hand side. And so there are people worshiping the beast with the Bible in front of them. I want people to know that. Everywhere. So you talk about charity as a way to God's heart, not knowing his name, lineage, how many verses you memorize, your seniority, how many followers you have. If you get away from, that'll offend people. They're like, wait, no, you got to say the name right. You got to be of the tribe of, Jacob, or like one of his offspring, 12 tribes. How many verses have you memorized? How long have you been, quote, in the truth and all that? How many followers do you have? That'll offend people in religious circles and as that's what God cares about. And so they're setting up a representation of God on earth that's completely demonic and against the Bible. Antichrist. That means they're God's left-hand side. Charity is the way to God's heart. And charity that cannot be repaid is the most directly tied to God's heart. We'll get the most access to God, because everything God does is a form of charity. It's amazing. Just say you don't care. This is point number 15. Say you don't care about anything except God and his spirit that is placed in all nations on earth. And that will offend people. That will freak them out. And how you want them all returned back to God soon. Like, you don't want to talk about, Black Lives Matter, freaking coronavirus. You don't want to talk about corporations, money, all these sports and all. You don't want to talk about any of those things except God's spirit, who is placed in on earth, and have those spirits return back to the Most High through Christ. That will irritate the hell literally out of God's left-hand side, because that conversation becomes spiritual. It becomes out of the flesh. And so that is Satan's job, is to get everybody in just the emotional, frenzy, and concerned about pleasure, seeking pleasures, and keeping the system going. Once a person starts, large enough group starts not caring about this world, that's when the end will happen. The Bible says that the end times will be cut short for the elect's sake. And the elect is another topic, another theme that is also running through the book of Enoch. And so that's what we're hoping for, that the elect give up, and then it's over. The 16th point, say you don't fear death and hell and actually look forward to it. That will freak people out. They're like, wait a minute, what? You don't want to live a long life. You don't want to, experience more pleasures here and all that kind of stuff. If you say no, you actually want to be back with God, like I said in my 15th point, that will irritate God's left-hand side. They won't understand it. Like Christ is saying here, that will be like you're speaking a different language to people. Verse 37, I know that ye are Abraham's seed, but ye seek to kill me because my word hath no place in you. And so any person with common sense who actually loves this God would want to be with that God. It can't be worse than this. It's just amplified now in the times that we live in now, because a lot of us know, and this is my final point, that this is hell. So any person with like half a brain cell would want to not be in hell and be with the person who all of this is just their idea, and it's like their lowest idea in terms of complexity, and righteousness. And so that's offensive to people when we reveal that this place is hell, and it's going to irritate the Christians the most. Just do a thought experiment. Imagine a place where things get built up and are constantly destroyed. That's here. Nations, anything that we build, even our body, we build it up, it can get destroyed. Your life can be taken at any moment. Your possessions can be taken at any moment. We see that in the times that we live in. Your surroundings are unknown. We don't even know the extent of our surroundings, and in any rigorous, clear way, what it is. The Creator is unknown, taboo to talk about, even amongst religious people. And you're forced to sin just to stay in that place. So how can this place not be hell? And then purity is injected into this world through Christ, the personality of the Most High, and it's crucified. So, and then the very people that claim to love that purity that was brought here will gatekeep that truth. They'll say, no, hell is somewhere else. It's worse than this. How could it be worse? How can a place be worse when you inject purity into it? It gets crucified. It gets killed. They're talking about a place of punishment and all that kind of stuff, but that's not what the Bible is talking about when it talks about hell. And punishment is experienced in the body. And so this is a judgment. Our experience here, our limitations, any pains that we go through and all that kind of stuff, that is our hell. And so some go through it more than others, but we don't want any of it. Like I said in my last point, that we look forward to not having to be judged and experience pain. That's one of the many, many things that we're crying out for, and especially for the poor. The pain is one thing, it's brutal, but no one's helping them. Like literally no one talks about them. You cannot, I challenge anybody to find me any kind of hangout from any flat earthers talking about this at all. No one. And people like end times teachers who are more scholarly than most people in the Bible and the Hebrews, they don't talk about that either. They're just talking about how much better they are, and then they need to get out of here. When it's not funny, but they're going to find out, all of us are going to find out who God actually cares about, and it's going to be surprising for a lot of people, not the people that come by here and understand what I'm saying, but you can have every other conversation except that. And I want people to know that's because once a person does stick up for the defenseless, the poor and the oppressed, the widows, and all that, we know now that the system will not take care of them. Only God can. So God has made a God-sized problem, and then only God can fix it. So it's better to just sweep it under the rug. And so I want people to know that that can't go on forever. That's just, or else the God of the Bible is not true. And we know that these words are true. They're written. So how can such pure, perfect words that describe our reality so perfectly not manifest? That doesn't make sense. So these words, for all of us, people who have received the Bible well, these words are life. This is the only thing left that is alive on this earth, are the words of God. And so, without it, we are dead. And, that's an amazing thing. I'll just end it off on that. But, this list is not exhaustive. There are many, many other points, but you won't have to get to the last point. I think I made 17 points here. You'd get to like the fourth one, and the majority of people will go away. And so this, for me, you don't have to get to the last one, which is hell, which is like the cherry on top, calling this place hell. And so that's why I know that my channel is not meant for very many people. It might not even be for anybody. And so it might just be for myself. And I don't even know if the Bible's for me. And so that's the way it is. So this is the standard of God, is that it's not just appreciating this list, which to me is actually fairly obvious in these days. It's then doing the works, to prove that these things have, sunk in our soul, and are valuable to us. And the challenge now is that we're not even allowed to interact with people, and stuff like that. So it's all God, it's whatever God wants. We are just characters in his movie, and we always have to feel like we're insufficient, no matter what we're doing. John the Baptist would never boast about the things that he's done, the miracles that he's done and stuff like that, as Elijah, ever, because he knows that he was empowered to do those things by God, and even evil people, God is empowering them to do evil in the days that we live in now. So they're not supposed to boast. So no one's supposed to boast about anything except the fact that we are at the mercy of God and whatever he wants. And so when we pass away, when our body dies, we are now entering the position where we're literally at the mercy of God for him to create whatever he wants. He could collapse that energy back to him. We don't exist. We don't have a whole consciousness anymore. Or he sees things that we've done in our life, and he creates it into something else, something more, and gives us more responsibility, and all that. And that's what we want, on God's right-hand side. But we have to align ourselves with the co-leader, the top of the right-hand side, who's Jesus Christ. So hope everyone's doing well. Take care. Bye.